Welcome to the Powerline Podcast, the official podcast of Greystone Power. I'm your host, Emily Young, and today we're talking about SCADA, or Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition. Our SCADA system is a crucial tool used by our system operators in the power restoration process. So, let's get started on episode 50 of the Powerline Podcast. There's more than meets the eye during power outages. Of course, you see the linemen out in their bucket trucks working on the lines, but what you don't see are the system operators working behind the scenes to keep them safe. Working in Greystone's control room, our system operators can use SCADA to remotely control switching devices in the field. They are often referred to as the Waffle House of Greystone because they are available 24/7, 365 days a year. Today I'm here with System Control Manager Kerry Spicer, who is here to discuss the power restoration process. Kerry, welcome to the podcast. Tell us a little bit about your role at Greystone.
Well, thank you, Emily. Well, as manager of system control, I'm responsible for the safe and efficient operation of our system control room processes. I make sure specific protocols and procedures are in place to ensure operations are safe and that we do our part to provide maximum power reliability for our members. Of course, I couldn't do that alone. I lead a knowledgeable team of system operators that I'm proud of and I depend on every day. So we have a knowledgeable also system operator team lead who advises our system operators and oversees the day-to-day operations of the control room. Our newest addition to the system control team is our SCADA systems administrator. He served Greystone for years as a lineman and then as a system operator, and he's now responsible for developing and maintaining our SCADA system. And one of my favorite and most satisfying roles is to be a part of the operations and engineering reliability team. We meet periodically solely for the purpose of planning, then monitoring, and then completing projects that will improve the overall reliability of our power distribution system.
Well, it's great to have you here. Is this your first time joining the podcast?
Yes, it is.
What were you looking forward to the most as you prepared for this episode?
Well, I've especially looked forward to this opportunity because, as you mentioned, our operation is kind of more behind the scenes, and understandably, a lot of folks don't understand what all that we do. So I've hoped that this will provide an opportunity to shed a little light on what we do in system control.
So, let's get into it. What are some of the main functions of the system control department?
Well, first, we are able to monitor our electrical distribution system, and we also have the ability to control much of it. You mentioned SCADA in the introduction and rightly defined what that acronym means, which is Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition. So through our SCADA system, which is basically a complex computer and communication system, we're able to see data coming back from several hundred switching devices on our electrical distribution system, as well as to remotely control those switches. Another primary function of system control is responding to the outage and trouble reports from our members. The Outage Management System, or OMS for short, as we usually put it, is another computer system that allows our operators to view and process all outage and trouble tickets that our members enter either by phone app, or via the web. So when members provide information through those means, as far as the calls, relating the calls or the nature of the outage, our operators see that information. Also, when these outage tickets are dispatched, we pass those along to the line crews working in the field. They can also view that information on their iPads. And this information can, by the way, greatly reduce the time that it takes for them to restore an outage. So another thing, there's often a need to de-energize sections or, basically cut power to sections of electrical line or even de-energize the entire substations so that maintenance work or testing can be done safely on equipment. In these cases, our system operators develop switching orders and then execute those switching orders using our SCADA system. Our system operators are also in constant contact with our service and line crews, our meter apparatus personnel who maintain all of our field equipment, and other field personnel by radio and phone. System control also communicates routinely with our member service representatives to advise and supply information when members have questions or issues regarding their power.
Can you tell us a little more about how the system is used to help restore power?
Sure. So again, our SCADA system is constantly sending us data. For example, if a tree falls across our lines causing a power disturbance, or fault as we call it, that can cause an upline switch to open, effectively causing an outage. When that happens, that switch sends information to the operators, again to the SCADA system, telling them that that switch has opened. When a switch opens, it has the same effect as when a breaker trips in your home. The power goes out. So with that information, the system operator often has the ability to open another switch, then close upline and or downline switches to reroute power and restore power up to both sides of the now isolated section of line. Of course, the crew will still need to go to the scene and clear the tree before all the power can be restored. But because of SCADA, the size and duration of that outage will be significantly reduced.
Oh, that's great to know. So, what's it like in the control room during a storm? What are your responsibilities?
Well, as storm situations intensify and we begin to see large outages develop, our operators are prioritizing and attempting to isolate outage areas and execute switching, again through SCADA, to remotely restore as much power as we possibly can as soon as we can. With the information we have at our disposal through SCADA and through the OMS systems, one of the greatest benefits is that we can now determine rather quickly where our largest outages are and direct line crews accordingly. This means getting more of our members on faster. Because there are a number of other activities taking place in the control room simultaneously, it can be challenging. We typically receive quite a few calls from emergency services such as 911, local fire departments, sheriff's offices, and they're reporting trees on line, lines down, fire started by down power lines, and any number of possible emergency issues that can arise during a storm. We're communicating all along the way with our operations managers and supervisors who are always assessing how many additional crews they may need to bring in, or if we possibly need to consider bringing in contract crews or requesting help from neighboring EMCs. We're also communicating with our own communications and public relations department, of which you're a part of, and who need updated information to provide to news agencies or maybe social media outlets.
We try our best to relay information to our members during a storm, and you guys help out a lot, so thank you. Many of our system operators have past experience as linemen or working out in the field. How does this help them in their roles today?
You know, that's true, and it's actually a tremendous strength of our operation. What we do on a daily basis involves lots of communication and interaction with our line crews, our service crews, and other field personnel. Our operators can visualize what the line crews are doing because they've been there and done that. This provides an additional layer of safety because, again, since they once did line work themselves, that knowledge makes them pretty hypersensitive to safety concerns and causes them to exercise extreme caution in how they communicate and interact with our crews.
What have been some of the most important developments with the SCADA system and your department in recent years?
Well, like all technology, SCADA technology has advanced tremendously over the years. When I first came to Greystone, we only had communication and control with our substation equipment. As our system grew, we expanded this capability to switches out on our lines. As I mentioned earlier, we now have control over several hundred switches, which allows us to carry out extensive power restoration operations remotely well before we even dispatch a crew to the scene. The latest innovation in SCADA is a concept called centralized automation. I mentioned how once our operators receive certain information from equipment in the field, they can then open and close switches to restore large amounts of power. But imagine if a computer could process that same information and then automatically open and close the switches to accomplish that same result. And then imagine if it could do that in just a few seconds rather than a few minutes. And then imagine if it could do that simultaneously in multiple instances on our system during a large storm situation. Well, that's centralized automation, and we're currently working towards making that a reality for our system in the very near future. I should mention that the advances we work towards in system control could never be accomplished Without the assistance of our other Greystone departments, many groups such as our IS or IT department, meter apparatus department who maintains our field equipment, communications specialists that maintain our fiber network, our mapping specialists, they all work together to make what we do possible. As I mentioned earlier, with the advance of SCADA and the integration of multiple technology platforms, it made sense to designate a full-time specialist dedicated to the development and coordination of various technologies involved. And that's the role of our new SCADA systems administrator.
Now, I gotta ask you, why did you decide to work in system control? Do you have any tips for people who might want to get into this field?
Well, I worked in our control room for many years, initially as a control room technician or dispatcher, as we were more commonly called. And as time marched on, SCADA expanded and the work became increasingly technical. The capabilities expanded and it honestly just became more interesting. I found myself asking to be more involved in our processes and to have a larger functional role. And eventually, Greystone hired its first system operators, of which I was one, and I guess the rest is history. As far as people wanting to get into this field, I think my best practical advice would be to find employment with an electrical utility, perhaps in a lineman apprenticeship program such as we have, or working in the field in meter apparatus or field engineering. There's no substitute for learning in depth how the equipment that we operate from the control room actually works and operates in the field. Another option, and maybe more similar to my path, is to seek out an electrical utility that employs dispatchers or control room technicians. They often incorporate programs to train those employees to become system operators.
Now here's a fun question for you. Do you have any pieces of trivia about your department for our listeners? Or do you have a favorite memory of your time here at Greystone?
I can't say one particular memory stands out, but I would say that my fondest memories at Greystone are recounting those really bad hurricanes and ice storms, and this may seem kind of ironic, but that wreaked so much havoc on our system and put so many of our members out of power. The feeling when they were over and we had finally got everybody's power back on was always just one of such accomplishment and satisfaction. But having said that, I'm in no hurry for the next one.
Wow, I learned so much about SCADA and the power restoration process. Thank you so much for being here today. Okay, so we always ask everybody the same last question. Is there anything else you'd like to tell our members?
Well, I would like for our members to know this, that just like you, our members, all of us here at Greystone enjoy our electricity and know how important it is to our lives. So during those unfortunate occasions when your power does go out, we really are obsessive about getting your power back on. I want you to know that whether it's our line crews that you see outside working on the lines, or whether it's our system operators working behind the scenes, we're not going to relax until your power is back on. And finally, I just want to wish you a safe and wonderful holiday and a Happy New Year.
Unfortunately, we're all out of time for today's episode. Make sure to check us out on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and X, formerly Twitter. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast, available on our website, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube. Thanks for joining us for episode 50. We'll catch you next time on the Powerline Podcast.